Okay, guys, so we have, today's 4.7. We're still factoring, but this time we're going to actually be solving. So you're going to get answers like x equals something, okay? So we need to learn one new thing before we can go ahead and do this. It is called the zero product property. It says, for every real number a and b, so a and b are actually going to be numbers. You started learning it last year. If a times b equals 0, then either a equals 0 or b equals 0. So write it all down in the mathematical terms first, and then we'll look at what it means in terms of numbers. Alright guys, let's think about it. So let's say that I give you something that looks like 3 times x equals 0. If 3 times x is equal to 0, what does x have to equal? 0. Okay, so what if I change it to, let's see, y times 2 equals 0. If y times 2 is equal to 0, what does y have to be?
0.
Also 0. So it doesn't matter which one is in which place. If it's equal to 0, one of them has to be equal to 0. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Okay, so let's look at it in terms of factoring then. So if we have two factors, x plus 3 times x minus 2. After we figure out what x is, this is a number and this one's a number. If they both are being multiplied and are equal to 0, then either x plus 3 has to be equal to 0 or x minus 2 has to be equal to 0. So we have two options here. Either this guy all comes out to 0 or that guy all comes out to 0. So we have 4 steps to write down, and then we'll start looking at examples. In order to solve a quadratic means that there is an x squared in the equation. So everything that we've been working with so far with factoring. First thing you need to do is get the quadratic equation equal to 0. That's very important. So we have to have the whole thing equal 0. Then we're going to use one of our 5 factoring methods. So we have 5 methods of factoring, and we are going to use one of those methods to factor completely, which is why our academic opener this morning was all about factoring using different methods. So after we're completely factored, we have the whole thing broken down in as many factors as possible. We can use the zero product property to set each one. So every factor has to be equal to 0. Because we don't know which one is going to end up being 0, so we have to look at all situations. And then you solve for x. We should have 2 answers. Okay, so we should get at least 2 answers there, or at most 2 answers. Okay guys, example 1. X squared plus 5x minus 6 equals 0. So, here's a big thing. Previously, what is different about example 1 than what we did during the academic opener today? It has an equal 0. So solving means that there's an equal sign. Simplifying means that there is no equal sign. So we should only get x equals when there's already an equal sign there. So you are not solving if there is no equal sign. Okay? So example 1. Does this one look familiar to you guys? It should. It's what we just did. It was on our AO. So what I want you all to do right now, which method would you use to factor this? Don't say it. Who's 14? Diamond. Thank you, Natalie. So we're going to use diamond method to factor this. So let's set up our diamond. I'm going to do it off to the side. Okay, setting up our diamond, just a quick check. What goes in the top of the diamond? Who's 27? Oh, it was you anyway. Okay, Juliana, what goes in the top of the diamond? -6. Good. So we put -6 in the top. Okay, don't say it out loud. What goes in the bottom of the diamond? Who's 5? Caleb. Caleb, what goes in there?
5.
Positive 5, good. Okay, you guys should be expert at this by now. Fill in the sides for me really quick. I'm going to give you 15 seconds.
Oh no. I'm just kidding. Wait, You pressured me. I can't think of it now.
Okay, what goes in the sides of the diamond? Samuel. 6 and -1. Agree or disagree, guys? Agree, so let's factor it out.
Wait. Sabrina told me 2 and 3.
X plus 6 times x minus 1. All of that is equal to 0. Alright, so step 1, we had to set it equal to 0. It was already equal to 0. Step 2 was factor, so we use the diamond method to factor. Step 3 says what? Who can tell me what do your notes say step 3 says? Who's 22? Use the zero product property to set each factor equal to what, guys? Oh, that was weak. Set each factor equal to? Thank you. Okay, so that means I'm going to set x plus 6 equal to 0 and x minus 1 equal to 0. Let me show you how we can make this organized. I draw a line between the two factors. So I split it up between the two factors. And we get x plus 6 equals 0 on one side. And x minus 1 equals 0 on the other side. This is how I want you to show your work, so that I know you know what it is you're doing. Okay, so each of these we did the very first week of school. How would I solve the left-hand side? X plus 6 equals 0. I want you guys to solve it right now on your own.
Wait, do we solve both sides?
Just the left right now. So just the left, you don't have to do both. Turn to your neighbor and see if you guys got the same answer for the left-hand side. Okay. Okay, so compare with your neighbor. Okay, what pair thinks they got it?
Wait, what did you get?
Everett, Jacob doesn't want to volunteer, but you can. What did you guys get? Or how did you solve it? Will you tell me?
Okay, so it's x plus 6 equals 0.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's a positive 6, it has to be negative 6.
Okay, so what did you do? You subtracted 6 from both sides?
Yeah.
Okay, 6 minus 6 gives me what?
0.
0. So we get x equals negative 6. A thumbs up if you got that. Excellent. Okay, so let's do the same thing on the right-hand side. Solve it really quick. Okay, share with your neighbor. Okay, what pair thinks they got it? Nate and Lizette. What did you get?
X equals 1.
X equals 1. So how'd you get x equals 1?
Just add to the negative 1.
Very good. You add 1 to both sides, so we get x equals positive 1. Ladies and gentlemen, I have x equals negative 6 and x equals positive 1. How many answers is that? 2. So here's what we're going to do. Let's write it out first. We can just write it as a list, negative 6 and positive 1. So if I have 2 answers, you guys are going to hate me. How many checks do I have to do?
Wow.
Oh my god.
2. So let's do the, on the right, write your check. We are going to plug each of these x's in to the original problem. So let's do x equals negative 6 first. So into our original problem, that gives us negative 6 squared plus, okay, so that's negative 6 squared plus 5 times negative 6 minus 6, and we want it to be, I ran out of room, equal to 0. It's our check.
How do you? I don't get this at all.
I know how.
Okay, so all I did was I took -6, my first answer, and plugged it into the original problem. That's all I did. But because it was a negative, I had to put it in parentheses. Okay, what is -6 in parentheses squared? 36. What's 5 times -6? -30 minus 6 equals 0. Okay. 36 minus 30, what does that give me? 6. 6 minus 6 is equal to? 0. So is -6 a correct answer? Yes. Now what do you think we have to do? Check +1. Now +1 is an easy one to check. We have 1 squared plus 5 times 1. I'm going to use bullets to separate them. Minus 6, and we want it to be equal to 0. What's 1 squared, guys? 1. What's 5 times 1? 5. Minus 6. Okay, 1 plus 5 gives me? 1 plus 5? 6. 6 minus 6 gives me? 0. So is 1 a correct answer? Yes. Example number 2. X minus 6 plus 8 equals 0. Okay. So we have x squared minus 6x plus 8 equals 0. First step in solving one of these says that we need to get the equation equal to 0. So I'm going back to my steps. This is why I have you write it down in words. First step is set the equation equal to 0. Is the equation, meaning there's an equal sign, equal to 0?
Yes.
Okay, so step 1, check, right? We got it done? Step 2 says factor completely. Looking at example 2.
I can't get.
Okay, which method would I use to factor this? Juliana? Diamond method, because it's an x squared and there's nothing in front of it. So I'm going to do the diamond off to the left this time just to make sure that we have enough room. I'm looking for two numbers multiplied to 8 and add up to -6. Jonathan, what'd you get? -4 and -2. Do you guys agree?
Yes.
Okay, so let's factor it out. That's x minus 4 times x minus 2 equals 0. Okay, so I have x minus 4 equals 0, or x minus 4, which will come out to a number, times x minus 2, and I want them to be equal, the answer to be equal to 0. So that means either this guy has to be equal to 0, or this guy has to be equal to 0. Does that make sense? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to draw a line between the two factors. And step 3 says set each factor equal to 0. So we have x minus 4 equals 0 and x minus 2 equals 0. On the left-hand side, x minus 4 equals 0. How would I solve that one? Add 4 to both sides. Good. So that gives me x equals 4. That's one answer. On the right-hand side, x minus 2 equals 0. Add 2 to both sides. Thanks, Nate. So that gives me x equals 2. So I have two possible answers, right? So what do I have to do? Check both of them. So in my check, I'm going to, let's do 4 first. I'm going to plug it into the original equation. So what we had before we factored. That's going to be 4 squared minus 6 times 4 plus 8 equals 0. Is everybody okay with how I'm checking my answer?
Yes, I am.
Yeah? Okay. What's 4 squared? 16. -6 times +4, what does that give me? -24 plus 8 equals 0. Okay, guys, let's use our brains. 16 minus 24, what does that give me? Negative 8. And negative 8 plus 8 is? 0. So x equals 4 is a correct answer, right? Okay, let's check the other one. I'm going to do it right here this time. The other answer is what? 2. So that means 2 squared minus 6 times 2 plus 8, and we want it to be equal to 0. What's 2 squared, guys? 4 minus 6 times 2 is 12 plus 8 equals 0. What's 4 minus 12? Negative 8 plus 8 equals 0. Okay, so my two answers are correct, so I can write a nice in box now, x equals 4 and 2. Now how do you guys feel between 1 and 5? A little bit better? A 4 now?
I'm still confused on how you check it.
Like, plug it in.
I don't get like.
Example 3 looks a little bit more complicated. Does anybody see why? Thank you, Danielle. It's not equal to 0. I have x squared minus 15x equals 16. Any ideas of how I could get the whole thing equal to 0? Can you say that a little bit louder? Yes. What is keeping the right-hand side from being equal to 0? 16. How can I turn 16 into 0? Subtract 16. So if I subtract 16, whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So that means on the left, I have to subtract 16 as well. So that's going to give me x squared minus 15x minus 16 equals what, guys? 0. Does that look like something we can factor? Yeah, which method would you use to factor that? Everybody should know this. 1, 2, 3. Excellent. Okay. What are two numbers that multiply to negative 16 and add to negative 15? You guys are close. You know it has to be 16 and 1. Which one has to be negative?
16.
16, because the 15 is negative, right? Okay, so how would that factor? X minus 16 times x plus 1. All of that is equal to 0. Okay, after we got the whole thing equal to 0, guys, that was steps 1 and 2. What is step 3? Look at step 3 in your notes.
Who's the 0?
Who's in 20?
Jacob. Oh,
Jacob. What is step 3? What do I do next from here?
Use the zero product property.
Use a zero product property. So, remember, we draw a line between the two factors. What should I write on the left-hand side?
X minus 16
Who's 17? China. What would I write on the left? Perfect. X minus 16 equals 0. Okay. And then what would I write on the right-hand side? Who's 25? Nobody. Who's 11? Maddie, what would I write on the right-hand side? No, the whole problem, not the answer. I know. So you get x plus 1 equals 0. Okay, what I want you all to do right now, solve both of those, get an answer for x. Okay, on the left-hand side, what did you do? 29. Who's 29?
Wait, no.
Matt, what did you do on the left? Add 16. So you got x equals 16. And then on the left-hand side, or the right-hand side, what did you do? Who's 30? Oh, Christina, what did you do? Perfect. So we get x equals negative 1. So my two answers here are 16, negative 1. For the sake of time, I'm not going to do a check, but you should. Okay, guys, example 4. 5x squared plus 4x equals 1. So I'm kind of jumping you a little bit to the next thing, but all the steps are still the same. Step 1 says I have to be equal to 0. Is my equation equal to 0? No. What can I do to get it equal to 0? Good. Subtract 1. So let's subtract 1 from both sides, guys. So that's going to give me 5x squared plus 4x minus 1 equals what? 0. What method would I use to factor this one? Bottoms up. Is that what you're going to say? Bottoms up, right? Okay, how do I do bottoms up? Multiply the 5, so that's going to give me x squared plus 4x minus 5 equals 0. What do I do next? Diamond. So what are two numbers that multiply to negative 5 and add up to 4? Natalie.
5 and negative 1.
Perfect. 5 and negative 1. So that is x plus 5 times x minus 1 equals 0. Am I finished with bottoms up? No. What do I still need to do? Good, guys. Divide by 5. 5 over 5 reduces to 1 over 1. And then, this isn't called bottoms up for nothing. What's the last step? Bring the bottoms up. So this all factors to, I'm going to rewrite it over here. X plus 1 times 5x minus 1. And all of that is equal to 0. Now remember, solving means I have x equals something as an answer. So this is step 3. Now everything is the same again. What do I do next? Tegan? Set each one equal to 0, right? So x plus 1 equals 0. Hold on. 5x minus 1 equals 0. What I want you to be aware of, you will get a fraction as one of your answers because you have to divide by 5. So one of your answers will come out to x equals negative 1, and the other one is x equals 1 over 5. Okay?